This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time, and we've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Excuse me. I was muted. Excuse me. My name is Derrick Broze, and I'm here as a journalist, not necessarily as a candidate for mayor of Houston. For those of you who know that I'm running for mayor of Houston and are interested in that, you can go to derrickbroze.com and find out all about that. And I'm going to be having some new campaign videos coming out. But at the moment, I'm speaking to you as a journalist, as an activist, as somebody who's concerned about some important topics. And we are going to be diving into, as the title says today, finding security in the face of restrictions on animals, stoves, and travel. And what does all that mean? Well, I'm going to explain to you in just a moment, but I want to let you know I am live right now on Odyssey, on Rockfin, and on several Facebook pages. And we are going to be broadcasting today. If you regularly follow me only on Facebook, I encourage you to follow my website, theconsciousresistance.com, to subscribe to me on Spotify, but also to use the alternative platforms. Odyssey, I think, is the best one. There's also Rockfin, there's BitChute, there's Hive. My work is all over the place. You can find me, but they're not always going to show it to you. So you got to kind of go out of your way, which is why I recommend just to check my website once a week at least. Go to theconsciousresistance.com. Let me go ahead and show it to you right here as we get started. This website, theconsciousresistance.com. And you can see today's post. You'll see, again, the title, Finding Security in the Face of Restrictions on Animals, Stoves, and Travel. You can find this if you want to watch this later. Now, what am I talking about? You might not have noticed that there's some debate taking place. So I searched Google so we can get a mainstream search. I wouldn't recommend searching Google. Stop using Google. This is just to show you what is the mainstream normie seeing out there on CIA Google. Well, if you search gas stoves, you see that there's quite a bit of debate going on around gas stoves the last couple months. It just all of a sudden the media and different institutions realize that gas stoves are apparently extremely dangerous, which may or may not have some element of truth, but all of a sudden they just coalesced around this. And then there's these increasing discussions around restricting the use of gas stoves in the United States. And it is actually an international issue. So as you see here, let's see headlines. We know gas stoves have health risks, but what about other gas appliances? It's like they're coming for everything. Fox News version, 5 ways Biden is still coming for your gas stove. News for Jackson, I'm not sure where that's, Jacksonville maybe. State legislature to tackle many topics Monday, including gas stoves. So I'm curious what that's about, but shows you that it's happening in different places. Gas stoves have a pollution problem. The propane industry hired an influencer. Okay, so it goes on, right? So the point is they're talking about this. There's debates about should restrictions on gas stoves take place? Should they not even be allowed to be sold? And overall, some people see this as an overreach of federal government or government in general. Others are being told that this is dangerous for human health, but also for the planet. And so they are supportive, generally speaking. And here's another one. This is going over to the UK, coming from The Guardian. This is about a month old, titled A Serious Threat. Calls grow for urgent review of England's wood-burning stoves. And the UK, England, a lot of people use wood-burned stoves, right, which are really awesome. And I think my grandma has one at her farm. They're also, I think, a great tool for independence, right? Because if you can find wood, you can sit there and heat a space, and they're very useful. There's not a lot of technology here involved, digital technology. It's kind of a sustained thing. It's a useful tool to have. Government plan to educate owners and encourage fines, not enough to effectively tackle air pollution, says these writers. And I'll just mention a couple of things here. It says it says politicians and campaigners have called for an urgent review of wood-burning stove, which they say causes a large amount of pollution in urban areas. The calls follow the admission of the Environment Secretary that the government had set weaker air pollution targets than it would like. The admission came as she announced a new environmental plan for England that held back from banning wood-burning stoves and instead settled for educating people on their use. The Times reported that the government would encourage councils to use their powers to issue householders $300 on-the-spot fines for flouting air pollution rules by burning logs at home. But the Green Party leader said the government should go further and potentially end the sale of log burners. So clearly this is being debated. This is like, it didn't happen this round, but they're going to educate people. That's where it starts. We're going to educate you. You have a choice. But what happens as it gets more and more restrictive? This is a sign of things to come. It's this going after the individual for the good of the planet. This is an issue that I have talked about for years. I've talked about this in my documentary, The Oligarchy, on the pyramidofpower.net. I am going to be talking about this as part of my campaign for mayor because I think there's a lot of people who care about the environment, the planet, and they don't understand how these issues that really essentially all it comes down to is voluntarism. If you try to take away an individual's choice and you do this for the good of the people or just because of force, because you think it's the right thing to do, it never ends up good. We need to respect individual liberties and create voluntary consensual relationships. Now, here's another one. Chickens kept in gardens will have to be registered under planned new rules. Changes in England, Wales, and Scotland will also apply to pigeons and birds of prey in bid to tackle bird flu. So it's either like restrictions coming about some claimed potential pandemic or flu, or restrictions based on some threat from the climate or need for saving the planet for this reason or that reason, right? It's just different reasons. I'm not even saying that these issues, I'm skeptical, of course, of this whole bird flu thing, but I'm not saying that generally speaking there aren't issues that matter, that we shouldn't have conversations about. Can people change their individual behavior? Like, sure, I think that it's a great idea to we're going to go into, like, for example, if it's bad for you to have a gas stove, if it's not good, then let the individual make that choice, right? The government doesn't need to be involved. And why in the heck do you need to register chickens in the name of bird flu? I think that's total BS. And it's clearly, in my mind, just a ploy to get track of people's food. And this is where this whole technocratic state is going. So we've showed you they're talking about potential restrictions on gas stoves in the US and then wood stoves in the UK. And then chickens need to be registered in Wales, England, and Scotland. Then we can go back a couple months back where there was resistance and protests in the Netherlands, where the government was raising the prices of are claiming that we need to lower nitrogen emissions, and so it was trying to close down farms and restrict farms. Now, this was an article, I don't think I've covered this yet in the past, but I've had it saved for a while because I think it's really interesting. Actually, we did cover this on Live Free, Think Free, the weekly podcast that I do. The Netherlands laid out plans to buy out hundreds of farms near nature reserves, an attempt to quell the fury of Dutch farmers over its goal of having nitrogen emissions by 2030. So they're going to cut their nitrogen emissions by half, they claim. The government will acquire large nitrogen emitters, so farms that they claim are emitting a lot of dangerous nitrogen, as part of a voluntary one-time offer, said Nitrogen Minister Christian van der Waal-Zegenlink in a letter to the parliament. The cabinet set aside $24.3 billion to fund the transition. So they're going to these farms that they say are near nature reserves, that they need to be protected and that are emitting too much nitrogen, and they're going to give them a voluntary one-time offer. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Let's go a little further. Says the target designed to comply with European Union rules. So there again, you got this international, supranational body, almost a world government, creating rules, and then the nations within are forced to go and coerced to go along with it. Do you see the problem? The European rules on reducing nitrogen pollution prompted uproar among farmers shortly after it was first presented last June. If implemented, the government's plan would require as much as cut of 95% in emissions in some provinces and see the livestock population in Netherlands reduced by a third over the next 8 years. This led to protests, as you guys might remember, the Dutch farmer protests all over the country, bringing cows to the government buildings and blocking roads with tractors and stuff. So interestingly here, they add this part at the bottom. If not enough farmers sell their businesses, then the government may have to force some of them out of business. Prime Minister Mark Rutte said in a press conference. So that's it, right? Voluntary one-time offer. If you don't take it, well, we might have to close these businesses down. That's what this is going to. And this is the problem again, like I was saying a moment ago. And I was sort of getting into a discussion with somebody on Twitter or seeing someone's comments on Twitter that about the next topic we're going to get into about smart cities and 15-minute cities. And they just can't see the danger in where this is going, because all they're hearing in the case of 15-minute cities is bike trails, walkable things, everything's close markets, community gardens, and things that honestly, I think that's a wonderful idea, to have a village that's everything's within 10 to 15 minutes of you. Of course, that's a great idea. But when it's being pushed by groups like the World Economic Forum and other organizations that we know have a vision of this technocratic future where they are able to use technology, AI, facial recognition, social credit scores, and other tools, as described in Klaus Schwab's book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and on the World Economic Forum website and in their materials, this is a world that will lead to many limitations on individual choice and liberty about what you can do, where you can go, when you can drive, what you can eat. And again, I'm a vegan, but I don't support any government or UN or World Economic Forum instituting policies that take away that choice from people, or use subtle propaganda to convince them that this is what they want, and or use buzzwords and flowery language to convince people who have good intentions and good hearts that what they are doing is a good thing for humanity, right? But you have to be able to look past the first layer of propaganda. And okay, they claim it's going to be equitable and diverse and social justice and sustainability and decentralization, all these kind of buzzwords that they'll use. You have to be able to actually look deeper than the hood, open the hood up and see what's going on underneath to understand their agenda. I mean, that's just what it is. Like, if you don't do that, you're going to get a misrepresentation of what's going on. And unfortunately, a lot of well-intentioned people do buy into this propaganda. Or they go search, like I did a moment ago, on CIA Google and say, okay, my friends are saying there's something weird about 15-minute cities. Let me go search CIA Google. And you're going to get these kind of articles that I just pulled up. Fact focus. Conspiracies misconstrue 15-minute city idea. Okay, we're going to go through this in just a moment. Here's another one. Dazed says, the 15-minute city, dystopian conspiracy or climate-friendly paradise? TikTok conspiracy theorists say that the 15-minute city agenda is an attempt to usher in climate lockdowns. Supporters say it can help save a dying planet. Now, I don't know where they end up on this. I didn't read this one yet, but it's just the fact that the conversation is being talked about. I think that's a positive, because it means that it's becoming that big that media, even if they want to laugh at it, like this next one from Vice, of course, they can't ignore it. Conspiracy theorists think walkable cities are really open-air prison dystopias now. To many city dwellers, a 15-minute city with everything you need within walking distance is a dream. Conspiracy theorists are seeing it differently. So that's like the mainstream things popping up. Then you've also got some reporting. This is from the Children's Health Defense, the Defender, the 15-minute city, a climate solution, or just an excuse for more control. And I'm going to say this, I will be putting all the links here at theconsciousresistance.com on the post for today's video. After we end here, I'll add all these links. So if you want to come catch up on these articles, I'm not going to be going over them. The point of today, of course, is solutions. It's titled Finding Security in the Face of These Things. But I wanted to show you some samples. We've talked about restricting gas and wood stoves. We've talked about registering chickens with the government because of bird flu. We talked about we haven't mentioned yet, but you guys all know about travel restrictions that we saw during COVID-19. And there's been talk of climate lockdowns. And this is something I talk about in the second edition of my book, How to Opt Out the Technocratic State, which you can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. I encourage you to pick this up because it's got 5 new chapters specifically talking about climate lockdowns, travel restrictions, talking about how to get unbanked with the coming CBDCs and these kinds of ideas. We're going to go over a little bit of this today, but we're mainly focused on like food, animals, that kind of region. This is just another area, just like and I've done presentations talking about this. If you've seen any of my recent presentations at Next Steps Conference or Envision Festival, I've been talking about how we're being attacked in these 5 different areas. And I'll just lay those out real quick before we move on. This would be the food, which is what we're talking about today. So coming after the food supply, messing with the food supply, the supply chain, registering your food, restricting maybe individual gardens or wanting people to register their gardens with the government, things like this. or all that stuff is about just getting to know where all the food is and then trying to find ways to limit, to restrict it. They could claim that there's like salmonella spreading, so your lettuce at home might be poisonous. You got to kill it all. You can't be growing food. And now the best thing for you to do with your new CBDC digital currency and digital ID is to make sure that you get the food through the government approved sources. And by the way, this week we're going to have to ration a little bit, so there's not going to be as much food available for everybody. Right? I mean, this maybe that's being an extreme to some of you, but this is where it's headed. If you understand again what's really going on, so our food is under attack, and our ability to grow food and distribute food and community gardens, all these things, we need solutions there, right? The second one would be the kids, coming after the kids' minds through the public indoctrination centers, also through the vaccination programs and generally the propaganda in the schools for the young minds. You know, a lot of people don't necessarily think about when you put your kids in the public indoctrination centers, you're handing them over to the state for 5 days a week for what, like 8 hours a day for 12 years of their life at the most critically kind of developmental years of their life. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're spending time with them, but the state's spending more time with them, really. So that's a lot of influence, a lot of power on these young developing minds. So the kids, the food, big tech, being able, like, getting us to use this technology. Right now, I'm on a Linux computer here. I'm on a Linux operating system. I'm trying to get out of their systems. I'm using the Above Phone, abovephone.com. I don't use Google. I use CryptPad alternatives, no more google.com, privacytools.io. So the big tech, the food, the kids, mental health. Part of the lockdowns was not just keeping us apart from each other, but attacking our mental health, right? So these are some areas that we're under attack, and I think it's important for us to strengthen these. And that's why today I'm focusing on these particular stories focused on food in different ways. The last one we'll mention is the 15-minute city thing. Now, I do want to say, as the description of this video says, that I think that this conversation does deserve nuance. I think there are some people out there in the freedom, truth, whatever movement who are probably rightfully so labeled conspiracy theorists because they make a conspiracy out of everything. And they also don't understand how to have a nuanced discussion with somebody without freaking them out, right? So if I wanted to talk to somebody about the concerns around 15-minute cities, let's say that one of you out there, you find out that I'm running for mayor of Houston and you're curious why I'm so scared of this 15-minute city thing, or you heard it was a conspiracy theory. How would I talk to somebody who is new to this idea? Well, for one, I would encourage them to recognize that by searching on Google, they're getting a very narrow search result that's only going to produce so-called mainstream sources, which are funded by pharmaceutical companies and funded by the wireless industry and other agencies. And they have generally shown that they're willing to shovel government propaganda as well, that we shouldn't just blindly trust these institutions. And by searching Google, you're only getting a limited amount of information, not the entire truth, right? If they can grasp that idea, then say to them, so consider that maybe there is something to be, giving some thought to, at the very least, about 15-minute cities that goes beyond just Vice's take of conspiracy theorists, right? Maybe there really is something here. What are the concerns? Well, for me personally, as a biker, I enjoy bike lanes. I enjoy trails. I like that the city of Houston has started to develop more of that. It's a really cool city to have that, to have parks and green spaces and all that. And I can see the benefits of it. The problem, the concern comes in is when people believe that their choices are being taken away. So there was a recent example in Oxford in the UK where they was talking about having filters, traffic filters. And I just talked to somebody about this on Twitter. He claimed this wasn't restrictions, but think about this. A couple of times a week, they create traffic filters where you can't drive through unless you pay a fee or pay a fine. Essentially, you give them money. Essentially, you can get a ticket or something to get through, but it's supposed to discourage car traffic and encourage foot traffic, biking, walking, skating, families. Like, it's awesome. Houston does this every now and then as well. They call it Houston Streets or something like that, and they'll have a quarter-mile area or radius. I don't know how big it is, but they take a different part of Houston, the Heights or Montrose or downtown, and they just shut it down to all car traffic. And it's just really cool. Everybody's out biking, skating, walking all over the places, and vendors are usually out and stuff. It's a cool experience. I understand the value of that. But those are all fun programs that just happen every now and then. We're not talking about restricting people's travel or even making them pay a ticket to get through in a traffic filter. I think that's the real concern, is when you start to come taking away individual choice and liberty, that's where people are not ready to play the game. And that's why this concern of, like, more control is just like with COVID, different measures that people were told were for the good of fighting against this thing, that they should lock themselves in their homes, they should stay home from work and lose money and all that stuff. And now the idea that you're going to be told for the good of the climate, you should, not drive more than 15 minutes, not drive more than 10 minutes, that it goes from being not just a cool urban planning hip thing to do, but a restriction on where you can go. And that eventually people are restricted to these districts or ghettos where they cannot go more than 10, 15 minutes, right? And in addition to this article here for the Children's Health Defense, I also found this. Guess who else is talking about this? The World Economic Forum, back at their meeting just a couple months ago, January 19th, when they were meeting, we were meeting for the Greater Reset. Well, they held this panel called Bold New Cities Take the Stage. And guess what? This is what it's described as. A growing number of new developments across the globe are staking out a vision for the future that will transform city life. From net carbon negative cities to linear cities, 10-minute cities, circular cities, and cities powered by AI. Did you get that? 10-minute cities. So they're already talking about 10-minute cities. And again, this is the concern that eventually it's going to be 5-minute cities and then 1-minute cities. And there's no reason to leave. The drones can deliver everything you want for you. You'll own nothing and be happy, right? I know for some of you, this is a hard concept, not most of my traditional audience, but those who might be new coming in or hearing about my work because of my campaign for mayor, I just invite you to look at these issues deeper. I do invite you guys to download this book, How to Opt Out the Technocratic State, because these topics are real. These agendas are real, and they're not going to disappear simply by ignoring them. So I want to mention two things. We're going to show you two things here, and then we will wrap up for today. This is all about solutions. So again, if you're, how many, raise your hand out there or comment below, please make a comment. If you guys are aware of this, you're aware of the gas restrictions, the wood stove restrictions, the registering chickens, the talk of 15-minute cities or 10-minute cities or smart cities. I've also done a lot of work on smart cities over the years as it relates to Houston, because Houston is slated to be a smart city. And the current mayor, Sylvester Turner, who was awarded the 5G Champion Award by the CTIA, which is the telecom big wireless lobby, he has spent the last 6 years turning Houston into a smart city by installing more digital infrastructure and working with companies like Microsoft. As a mayoral candidate, personally, I plan to abolish all that and get rid of all that. But the point is, these things are happening. And if you're not aware of them, you probably should take some time to become aware of them, because these are real concerns. So let's go ahead now, and I'm going to share my other screen here, and let's talk about the solution. So how do you find security when you're facing this? Like, for one, you always have a choice, right? Personally, I would not ever register any animal that was my pet, that was an animal I was working with on the farm. I'm a vegan, so I'm not going to eat the animals. But if I had any kind of animals in my house as any kind of reason, I would never think to register them with the government. And personally, I would never vaccinate them, and I would never chip them either. But that's another conversation. So I think that you always have a choice. You don't have to say yes to their systems. If they say, hey, you can't have a wood stove, obviously, I guess you're going to put up smoke. Somebody's going to detect that. You're going to have neighbors calling you, like on COVID, and the same way people are snitching for masks or for business opening. You would have that happening for sure. I mean, you're going to have these people always. This is why community is so important. I'm showing on the screen right now, theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. This is where you can download or purchase my book. You can find right here, you can read the whole thing for free. And we just released the second edition, December 12th, the original edition, January 30th, 2020. So 3 years ago, right before COVID, I was warning about this stuff. And you can buy this book, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, everywhere else. You can find the Spanish version. You can find the audiobook. And in here, I have new chapters on using the Freedom Cell Network for unbanking, unschooling, and permaculture. I'm going to show you the Freedom Cell Network in just a moment, because permaculture is key. If you don't know anything about permaculture, this book has a very basic introduction to that idea, but I encourage you to start diving, to watch a documentary called Inhabit, A Permaculture Perspective. Inhabit. Then I have a chapter on fighting lockdowns, immunity passports, and travel restrictions. And then my final chapter is about the Agorist development goals. That is the autonomous development goals. This is like an alternative to the sustainable development goals, because I believe, just like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum are pushing their propaganda and their version of how do we help the planet, how do we help humanity? Well, it's technocratic, it's more control, trust the experts, we're going to rule things from the top down using AI and our facial recognition and all these kinds of tools that they have at their disposal. We need to create an alternative path. At least this is what I'm choosing to do. I'm choosing to do this in all aspects, as a journalist, as a candidate for mayor, as a human being, as an activist, as an author, as a public speaker, encouraging people that we need to start building parallel systems now if we're going to survive and thrive in the face of what is taking place and what's coming. It's already showing itself. And I don't really care anymore if people think I sound crazy or not ready to see what's happening, because I think in time you will see what's happening. So we need to start being proactive and build the parallel systems for the coming generations that are depending on us. And the way that we do that, I believe, is by offering alternatives. So they have the sustainable development goals. I'm proposing the autonomous development goals. I gave a talk about this recently at Next Steps conference in Atlanta. You can find it at theconsciousresistance.com. Go look at presentations. I encourage you to watch my last 3 presentations, 2 at Envision Festival in Costa Rica, 1 in Next Steps in Atlanta, and I'll be giving another one next week in Tulum in Mexico at Tribalize. And I'm basically building on this idea and trying to encourage as many people as possible that all this stuff is coming. It's coming more rapidly. There's banking things going on. There's pushing for CBDCs. You need to be ready. You need to be thinking proactively. This book doesn't have all the solutions. It's not the book that's going to save your life, but it's going to give you a lot to think about, and it does have practical, proactive steps that you can take to go from being banked to unbanked in 6 months to a year if you're serious, and even sooner if you're serious, super serious. But yeah, so I encourage you to check out the book. Now, the main solution though here is always going to be community. We need community, as chapter 6 is called, the counter-economic community, which basically means the underground community, the alternative community, the counter community, the parallel community. We need to have support systems, because let's say again that you're doing the wood stove and you're in the city and your neighbors are total indoctrinated statists who have bought into the propaganda, and they see you with your wood stove, like, how dare you, selfish, dirty person, you're killing the planet, and I'm going to report you, and all this kind of stuff, right? So it definitely will serve all of us better to be in a position where we are living amongst or near or around or close to like-minded people. The Freedom Cell Network, freedomcells.org, is one of the places to do this, guys. I encourage you to go to freedomcells.org. I've been talking about this for 7 years now, and we've only grown now. We're at, it says 38,378 members here. There's 10,000 plus people on Telegram. There's probably more, thousands more just doing it in the real world without using our website. But if you're in an area where you don't know anybody and you're looking for like-minded people, you need to find community as soon as possible. Whether that means you want to get land or you just want to know other people in your suburb, your city, or town, you need to start finding people. I will also say in the long term, the cities are not going to be safe. You need to find a way to get out of that system. And I think going further out of the city to the countryside, et cetera, building new cities in these spaces, not cities like we currently understand them, but new spaces, new villages, new towns, new ways of relating. And maybe that even would look like a 15-minute city, a place where everything is within 15 minutes of you, but it would be voluntary. It would be done with permaculture. It would be done with community and with choice, individual liberty. At least this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm building an intentional community out here in Mexico, but really a larger network of communities that are united by individual liberty, permaculture principles, and mindfulness, because we want to keep growing as people. It's called the Conscious Agora, theconsciousagora.com. And there are other people on Freedom Cells website, freedomcells.org, that are looking to meet those who want to build community. They're looking for people who want to get involved in activism in their city. There are thousands of groups on here. I encourage you to visit freedomcells.org, read the what, why, and how to get involved, learn about what you can do on the website, read about the idea, why we talk about groups of 8, read about our principles, decentralization, localization, solutions focus. This is not political. This is not complaining. This is not blackpilling, nonviolent, and apolitical. So I encourage you, if you are looking for community, that's the solution to what we're facing. And I posted this earlier on the Freedom Cell Network. Who is concerned about things like 15-minute cities, smart cities, restrictions on wood stoves and animals, registration of gardens? What are you and your Freedom Cell doing about it? Are you doing anything yet? If not, what are you waiting for? This is a time where you should be taking these ideas and the network in front of you. And I mean on the website and in the world and on Telegram, there's a lot of Freedom Cells on Telegram. You should be taking this network seriously. Use the maps to find people near you. Create cells and start meeting in the real world. Stop focusing on the negative things in the world and be proactive. The coming generations are depending on you. You have all the tools you need within your heart and your local community. I encourage you to step up and take action. Otherwise, why are you here? Why are you on this website? Why are you listening to my work? Remember the mantra of the Freedom Cell Network. Assume everyone knows the problems. Focus on the solutions. So again, freedomcells.org. I'll also mention another one that I'm going to be interviewing the founder of next week. His name is Tag. I met him recently. he has a website called freesteading.com. And similarly, you can find like-minded people who are doing homesteading, trying to buy land and grow food and different things like that. It's honestly very similar to Freedom Cells, different language, different setup, but you can find groups. They have like a group set up for all 50 states in the US. It's mainly US based, where Freedom Cells is worldwide, but you can go there, create an account, look around. It looks very similar, but try to use both websites. We don't really care. And the other thing I want to mention before I close is you don't have to like me. You don't have to like John Bush, Ramiro Romani, or any of the people involved in the Freedom Cell network to benefit from it. Use it, find people in your area, because that's more important than whether you like me or like this or that. Use the website, put your goals and your skills on there. Put your roles, make it easier for people to find you. If you don't see people in your area, create a cell in your area, put it on the map. Other people will contact you. Then before you know it, you're going to be meeting, you're going to be finding other people who are focused on similar goals. I've seen people take this seriously and they start growing food. They start taking their kids out of public school. They start taking their money out of the banks. They start buying land, and it's working, but you have to be proactive. So that's my encouragement. That's how you find security in the face of travel restrictions and smart cities and 15-minute cities and gas stove bans and animal registration and garden registration. The Freedom Cell Network, community, organizing locally, now, everywhere. That's the key. And if you want more ideas, again, you can find my book at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. It's called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, second edition. The second edition is available in Spanish. We're working on the German and French translations, and it'll be released sometime in the next year in Japanese and Korean as well. So thank you guys so much for supporting my efforts here. I appreciate it very much. Again, the website is theconsciousresistance.com. That's where you can find all of my content. And I won't be talking about this too much on most of the Conscious Resistance channels. If you follow me on Facebook, you're going to get everything. But if you want to know more about my campaign for mayor, DerrickBroze.com. Also, I have a YouTube channel specifically for the mayor campaign. Just search Derrick Broze for mayor, I think. And yeah, that's the main way to find out about the campaign. Other than that, if you're just following the Conscious Resistance Network, for the next 7 months, you won't hear much about it. You're just going to see me doing my usual journalism, podcasts, interviews, reports, etc. And I greatly appreciate your support. If you want to go the extra mile and support my work, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. There's a PO box. You can send any kind of support you want. There's crypto there. I don't have a Patreon. I'm totally paid by the Last American Vagabond for my writing and user support. So thank you guys. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you're beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.